just long enough. So from the Old Testament, once again, from the book of Judges in the 16th chapter, and if it's all right with you, I would just like to rip off the 31st verse. I read in your hearing verses 23 to 31, but I want to read verse 31 again. Listen carefully. The word says, "Then his brothers and all his family came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah his father. He had judged Israel 20 years." Amen?
Amen.
Since indeed we have all been taught within a single drop of Scripture, there is an ocean of truth. In this one verse, there's enough to preach for all eternity. And I want to use a familiar subject for this morning because I deem it necessary and think it is both palatable and necessary for us to hear it again. The subject is, it's not how you start, but it's how you finish.
Amen.
It is not how you start, but how you finish. For those of you who are Bible scholars, for those of you who have read this chapter and a portion of this book a number of times, I just remind you that herein lies the facts in reference to Samson and Delilah. For the last 2 months, we have been discussing this book of Judges. This is prior to the period when Israel had kings. This is during a time, a period again that we talked about, that word that seems to jump out at us called apostasy. And apostasy just literally means to fall away from. It's ironic that Israel has been taught what it is God wants her to do, but Israel perhaps is indicative of most of us.
Well,
we know what God wants of us. The problem is that we vacillate back and forth in our own lives and attempt to do that which we perceive is right in our own lives. It is evident by now this last deliverer, this last judge that's listed here in this biblical text, known as Samson, who perhaps is one of the most gifted and strongest warriors who ever lived, seems to be weak in so many other areas. But he has this proclivity in his own life to somehow wind up in the wrong place at the wrong time. He seems to be an individual who has a weakness, and it seems to jump up at him at the most inopportune time. This is not the first time that we've looked at Samson, and Samson has had a problem with the females. He seems to gravitate for one reason or another towards what the biblical text called the prostitutes. And I wanted to apologize to you this morning because when I dealt with Timnah on last week and suggested to you that herein is a city that means great, I spoke too quickly. I had already moved forward and have discovered that Timnah was not the city that means great, but rather it is Zorah. Zorah is that city where Samson meets Delilah. Remember, the real issue with the fact that Samson has a problem with being in a city that means grapes is literally because he's a Nazarite. And a Nazarite, to begin with, is defined as an individual that God has called, has set apart, and they're not allowed to cut their hair, to shave their beard, nor to drink wine, nor to be anywhere near anything that produces grapes. The theological suggestion in this whole text is to suggest that all of us must be conscious of our weaknesses.
man.
Now, I know that most of you holy angelic beings here in this place today are righteous and holy and separated from sin, and you live almost so holy that you are perfect.
Well,
but I stopped by to serve notice to all of us that there are some infractions in our own personal lives that render us helpless before God. There's some stuff in our own personal lives that if somebody else knew about it, don't look at me like that, you'd be frightened to death because you did not want it known. Samson finds himself in Gaza. Now here's the dilemma that he faces right away in the 16th chapter. He's in Gaza, but there are a group of people called the Philistines who are already in the city, who are waiting for an opportunity to bring him down. Because previously, this individual, Samson, has caused them great turmoil and trouble. If you come here mentally with me for just a moment, I would dare suggest to you that there are some geographical locations in your mind that has caused you some personal disruption, that has caused you some challenging moments. You'd like to get rid of it, but it just seems to linger in your mind. Paul has suggested in his New Testament writings that there are stations in our own personal lives that we will flee when no one's chasing us. I better repeat that. Sometimes we will have a tendency to run when there is no one running after us because we know more about ourselves than we'd like to know. If you are honest, you have to confess. There's some stuff in your personal life that you'd like to get rid of, you wish was not there, gone down some roads you wish you hadn't gone down. As a matter of fact, there's one or two of them that you kept out in. Samson knows he has a problem with the female, and yet he finds himself in Gaza, and once again it's this look that gets him in trouble. It's all right to glance. Everybody got real quiet. It's all right to glance. But when you give it that stir, and it stirs up desire, then you've got an issue. Samson looks gazingly at Delilah and notices her effervescent figure. And it appeals to his psyche and causes him to have a desire for something he ought not desire. Now the inference here in the text is to suggest that your challenge may not be a female or a male. It's whatever it is that represents your Delilah. Because some of you will get holy and self-righteous and say, oh, I don't lust for her, I don't lust for him. Well, whatever it is that takes your attention away from your God becomes that thing that looms large in your life and causes you problems. The word we talked about before some weeks ago, hermeneutics. Many of us had to study hermeneutics in seminary. And it's just that great big word that means, how do you interpret this text that you're reading? And so while interpreting, utilizing the skills being taught in hermeneutics, I had to find out what was the sense in Laban or the situation that the folk found themselves in, so that somehow I might get a better understanding of what the text means. The Philistines are there watching carefully, and Samson rolls into town. They notice he likes Delilah and decides to use Delilah to get to Samson. What is it Lucifer is using over your life so that somehow he can get you away from where you ought to be? I know my subject matter is, it's not where you start, but it's where you finish. And so I've got to somehow build some bridges so that I can get you from where Samson started to get you to where he finishes. Don't leave the 16th chapter as Samson wrestles with Delilah, trying his best to toy with sin. The moment you find yourself toying with sin and continuing to go down that road, sooner or later you're going to find yourself in a predicament you can't get out of. He kept toying with Delilah. Delilah kept trying to find out from him, where does your strength lie? And whether or not you know it, the devil right now is trying to figure out how he can get to your weakness so that somehow he can get you to turn your back on the God that's giving you the strength that you got. You can sit there and look as holy as you want to. You can try to impress the person on your road, assuming that you have no infractions in your life or your weaknesses. But the truth be known, you got some stuff in your life that's caused you some weakness that you wish you were strong in. And so she tries to manipulate Samson, just like Lucifer is trying to manipulate you. I don't know what your weakness is. I don't know what it is that can bring you down, but Lucifer does. And so he dangles it before you so that somehow he can bring about your demise. You do understand that Lucifer came along so that somehow he could absolutely destroy you. That's his attempt. He wants to take you out of it. And so there is this conversation that is held with Samson and Delilah. The boys have already agreed to give 1,100 pieces of silver to Delilah if she can convince Samson to give up where his strength lies. The devil will do whatever is necessary to take you out of it.
That's right.
He will pay whatever price is necessary to stop your progress. But 3 times Delilah has come to Samson, and finally she says, baby, it's obvious you don't love me. This is Smith's translation, I'm sorry. It's obvious you don't love me, because if you loved me, you would tell me where your strength lies. Now don't miss the interpretation of the text, because as she approaches Samson on those 3 different times, each time he gives a little bit more of his truth away. A little bit more of the truth. You'll notice in the dialogue that Samson just keeps toying with her and then finally gives up the information. If you toy with sin long enough, if you go down that road enough time,
that's right.
If you find yourself in that spot long enough, sooner or later, it's going to get you.
That's right, that's right.
If you've got this proclivity for eating certain foods and you're trying to stay away from them, you're dieting, you're trying to make sure that you eat those things that have some nutritional value so that somehow you remain healthy and in good shape. If you're eating, going to the wrong spot, there's a good chance you're going to tempt yourself to eat the wrong thing.
That's right.
Am I talking to anybody this morning?
Amen.
So it may not be the food substance that you have a problem with, but if you go down that same road enough times and you know that's used to be the crack house. And you know that if you go down that road enough times, you will be like Pookie. He just be calling you. And after a while, you're going to give into it because it just keeps calling. Am I talking to anybody in here this morning? Or maybe it's not the line that you run. Maybe it's not the drug. Maybe that's not your choice. Or maybe it's the alcohol. Maybe it's Jack or one of the boys. And you know that if you go past that beverage store enough times, Bud's gonna call you. And you're gonna look up and you give it in. Am I talking to anybody in the house this morning? Or maybe most of you in there still so holy you don't have any problems. Or maybe you know that when you go to that one particular spot and that scratch off just keep. According to the biblical text, there are three things that toying with sin will do, according to Scripture. Toying around with sin long enough will bind you. It will tie you up so that you are no longer able to utilize your strength the way you once were. Samson was bound. He was bound only after they cut his hair. He messed around, rested his head on Delilah's lap, went to sleep, and woke up. Yeah, he did. I'm just telling you, the text is revealing to you that Samson woke up and his hair was gone. He is bound. So they bind him. And then they gouge out his eyes. They blind him. They bind him, they blind him, and then they put him on the mill and they grind him. The devil will bind you so that you lose your power and are incapable of speaking out on behalf of God because your words no longer have power. So he will bind you up so that what you have to say no longer carries the authority that it once had. Then he blinds you so that you are incapable of leading yourself in the right direction. Then ultimately puts you to the meal so that you are grinding like an ox. And so we find ourselves going in the wrong direction, having lost what God gave to us. But it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Samson has spent the last 20 years of his life as a deliverer, as a judge, as a political leader, but he still has issues. The good news for us today is that you may have been in and around the church a number of years. God may have given you the authority and the power to do what needed to be done. But you are just like Samson. There is something in your life that is a weakness that causes you problems. But all you have to do is turn back to God.
Amen.
The good news is that when Samson is dealing with his issue, even after his hair is gone, after he has been bound, after his eyes has been gouged out, after indeed he's been grinding at the wheel, his hair grows back. The theological implication here is that even when we've blown it, when we've messed up, when we've gone so far away from God, God still has not given up on us. God is still allowing an opportunity for us to get back to him. Samson is there, and he's being an entertainer in front of all these thousands of individuals, and God, even now, still reserves a way for him to get back. If you are here this morning and you've been toying around with sin and you've messed up, you've blown it, you've gone left when you should have gone right, and God is even now is saying, I'm still making a way for you. In verse 31, where it talks about his family has come to get him after he has died, after he's taken out 3,000 of the Philistines in one blow, more than he's taken out his whole life. They come to get his body, to take him back to Eshtaol, to Zorah. The only thing that I want you to know is this. The very place that he ends up, Eshtaol, in Zorah, is the place where he began. God wants to give you back everything that the devil has stolen from you. Whatever it is, God is saying to you, I want to bless you. All you have to do at any moment